Byrne, who's going to be reading from The Overmind, okay? And it's be reading lyric sequences and poems from this new publication, which is downstairs. Broken Sleep books are on the left-hand side of the Small Publishers Fair. So please do visit the stand after the reading to talk more if you want to. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing?
Very well.
All right?
Yes.
Good. I'm not going to say too much more, I just start with a poem. Enter the interlude, the shadow box, the waltz. Reverse your voice first, then wake up, plumping the pillow, attunally sounded out like crystal cut dust. Cello funeraries, burnt gristle on the hook. Once I saw your face inside the mirror, looked back, swallowed myself in the glass. Charcoal outhouse, rooms, pyramids, melds of history. We never thought of being alone. It kept me from overfeeding the boy under my skin. Tomorrow, how will you know? I've had to wait lifetimes. Tomorrow, the idea of it could change my name into redemption or break it into pieces. Tomorrow as midnight, and by morning, wind sieved, sand into sun, a path to light the dunes. Tomorrow, or else, and unless the song leads me waiting on a dark windowed car to arrive, its tail strewn with black ticker tape. Tomorrow as breath blown out, not yet. How long left to wait? I've shaken hands with myself so often, I know the dry contours, the underbones, dread in the arc of a question mark. You don't hear something back like that and live unchanged. It's not like one note is blue when the echo is red, or what can be held down by someone else's idea of organic logic. Same old friend, same old sky. I listen for you to enter the empty room at night. I turn up the music until it stops. So that's how the book opens. The Overmind, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a concept. No one quite knows exactly who devised it first, but I have a feeling that two poets were kind of in dialogue, one with the other. So Indian, well, poet-philosopher really, Sri Aurobindo, I don't know if you've heard of him before, he was really interested in the idea of the overmind, and just a quick quote of how important it was to him. The overmind releases a million godheads into action, each empowered to create its own world, each capable of relation, communication, and interplay with others. So kind of is everything and the permutations of everything in a way. But the poet I found first who was speaking about it is H.D., probably known to many of you, the great modernist poet. And I always thought it was because she was dissatisfied with her diagnosis. She was one of the first people in London to see Freud, and maybe wanting to self-diagnose after seeing the Dear Doctor, she described the overmind as like wearing a cape over your head. And for her, it was like wearing the cape of a jellyfish. It didn't quite arrive in time. I was hoping to be wearing a jellyfish by now, but if you could perhaps imagine that. So I read this poem called The Overmind when I was in New York City, and quite a lot was going on at the time. So I was in a road traffic accident. I was hit by a truck in New York, and I was just trying to sort of see through the jellyfish at this point. HD says that everything becomes very blurry and yet vitalized. A great time for her to be writing, but also perhaps when things are very difficult. So yeah, this kind of mentions the accident. There is one graphic moment. And also early on, there's a reference to Borges' great short story, The Aleph. Anyone read that? one of my favorite short stories, where at the end, the world can be seen from, well, not just the world, the universe itself can be seen from all angles. So this is the overmind. I was wearing a jellyfish over my head. I could barely see at all. Must have fallen down a basement aleph, bumping off the steps. I imagine it was the same way I fell when my mother was pushed. My fetus, 6 months gestational inside her. The sting made my skin feel like it was being flayed, and when I opened my eyes, I saw the walls shudder, as if mid-quake. I asked the doctor, what is the distance between curse and symptom? And she wrote out her reply on a prescription pad. It's like trying to measure the smell of death. June, the air thick as tar. A 60-foot truck came rolling off Shore Drive onto 67, smashing the side of the cab. I saw it all in slow motion, wearing my jellyfish cape again. A tunnel of pixelated shrapnel, the taxi driver's airbag, an exploding green mushroom. Someone groans, "Who are you?" Face pressed against the glass, blood on the dash. Turn off the ignition, turn it off, then doing it myself, but unable to pull him out. I emerged from the sky-tilted passenger side, as if opening the escape hatch on a submarine, and jumped down. A fireman mummified my hands, and we stared at the battered cab, the driver cut from the windscreen before shock vomiting onto the verge. Glowing red and white in the ambulance light, a young medic said, "You were lucky. Most people don't crawl out of those." I wanted to call my daughter, Gaia, realizing I could still hold her in my arms, see her grow. "Thank you. It is October. I have returned the jellyfish to the sea." "You've been given another chance," said the doctor. Strange term for anyone on the brink of divorce. "To survive, I must decomplexify everything. No cigarettes, no meat, no wine, no love, not yet. It's too early to say how things are going. One day I might wake up and not feel the sting." So, after the accident, we all know New York, sort of taxis, gold rushing down the avenue. Last thing I wanted to be seeing was taxis all the time. And so I decided to kind of hobble to the airport and go to a remote place in Baja, Mexico, part of Baja. And I wanted to find remoteness, just a few days of something different from the metropolis. And I went to, I found this beach, but there was another beach right behind it, so I'll read these 2 poems. They kind of dovetail. Lover's Beach. Plant a foot from the rickety boat and wish for luck. A totem of rock points to invisible stars, and the wind grins, lifts an umbrella from the soft stake you made in the ground. To enter into this requires a little burning of the skin. A man alone in the water, his lover lounging beside a tower of mango, sighing to the sun. Just a little burning of the skin. By dusk, the totem's shadow smothers its tide, hieroglyphs of heron's lime and blood. When the last boat arrives, you wade in, leap over the waves. And so, just 100 yards behind Lover's Beach, of course, is Divorce Beach. Divorce Beach. No paddling. You can't just dip your feet in. Many people die here. Even to reach the shore, you might as well be breathalyzed or take a hit from a ventilator. Riptidally, your future awaits. People have died here. Others scroll back through their WhatsApp last scenes of the XX to be. Are you still awake? Is it much too late now? Cracked molar of rock, No one else but you and the breakers fume. A solitary red flag declares, beyond this point, everything is risk. So I'm really delighted to publish this new book. It's just out. In fact, this is pre-release if you want to buy it from Broken Sleep. Great publisher. If you don't know Broken Sleep, go and have a look at their table downstairs. They publish many exceptional people, some of them in this room. And yeah, Aaron and Emma are running it from a remote farmhouse in Wales. It's extraordinary what they do. So this is a poem kind of about the absurdity of men, in a way. But the title was given to me by a poet who passed away last year, Alan Halsey. And so the poem's not dedicated to him in the book, but I'll dedicate it instead to Steve Fowler. Nemesis, not because he's an absurd man, he's a beautiful man. Nemesis. He said his wife gave birth to their inner child. He said the world's water flows through a single tap. He said Mercutio was a hothead in a quadrangle. He said only fishermen sing the river's soliloquies. He said he lives and dies by the nether lodge. He said moonlight is the most imitated form of nature. He said even the clouds are known for putting it on. He said, who do you think you are, one of the three Brexiteers? He said rainbows clattered in his father's voice. He said his mother was from a rare breed of three-headed sabres. He said the grandest lunacy is yet to come. He said professionalism is the rife of doom. He said Cyclops calls the sheep in from the fell. He said Dryope speaks to him on the heath in mirror code. He said Mountbatten believed in angel aviaries. He said the wheat fields are cotted with blood. He said he spoke loudest in bed. He said the car waiting outside is the coffin. He said it takes a shovel to dig the southern palace. He said the worst kind of talk is blowpipe. He said the best kind of nightmares are calligraphic. He said blue is the most echoic colour. He said television is the longest running cartoon. He said Trident is sharpening it for Poseidon. He said Galileo never took their word for it. He said he always reads the parentheses first. He said the Vatican got drunk on Maron's wine. He said they believe in the official version of difference. He said the wasp keeps its last sting in the villages. He said he was made to feel like a pigeon statue in an empty square. Boo-hoo. He said all power is malarial. He said foliage is really submarine. He said to look out for the shadow curtain. He said his name was Nemesis, nobody among men. So I'm going to read just a few more, and yeah, I think because we're close to it, a few poems about London. There is actually a reference to Conway Hall in this book, but I feel like it would be a bit cheap to read it out. But I remember writing it because I had COVID and I was in London, and I was thinking about this old Italian barber who used to work around Red Lion Square, and he used to cut my hair over a bottle of red wine. So by the time you have your hair cut, you have no idea whether it's any good or not. He just keeps cutting all day around that side of the square. But let's keep with the power structure, perhaps. And this is Westminster Abbey. A friend invited me to a Wordsworth event, commemoration. Of course, we might admire the genius of Wordsworth, but Wordsworth, the man, was a tax collector, and he did like to write poems about, poor Tom outside his house cutting down a tree. Go and help the man. This is Westminster Abbey, and a few other people are mentioned here. The Ben is Ben Jonson. Westminster Abbey, privilege, like a prayer that chooses who is washed to order and who is washed unclean. Show me his hands, said the messenger, and I'll show you the crime. O viper, O mandrake, O memory of sin beseeched and stung to life in the name of sacristy. A choir boy sings for doves to fly from the cannon's mouth. not knowing that the barrel is loaded. At Poet's Corner, Ben was buried upside down. Someone always counts the donors. Who pays their debts before leaving? Who doesn't? Gladstone clutches his spear. Peel pulls up his flabby robes. Oh, this is what I feared, to be surrounded by those who deny us the miraculous. And a couple more. We know what time it is, right? It's election time coming up. Of course, lucky here. Got rid of 14 years of the Tories. But I'm thinking of the American election. So I wrote this when I was in America. And yeah, I'll dedicate this one to Julia. I'm collaborating on a poem, Fine American Poet. And yeah, this poem was written when I was in Ithaca, working there. And around it, it's fairly hippie, kind of very much democratic place. But in the suburbs around, it's quite Republican. And I would just eavesdrop. This is a poem, Eavesdropping. And it's called Americans Talking About Guns. And it does have a moment of violence in it. Americans talking about guns. Take away the gun, he said, and you take away the history of this country. The gun of this country, pointed at everyone, from neighbor to state, at the head of my son. Inside the gun of this country is another gun. Congress, filibuster, capital, murder. The gun of this country, someone else's country. Nations who called it by other names, mothers and gods. There's nothing more relaxing than a morning on the range. This AR-15 shoots straight as a dime every time. Hold it, the gun covered with blood. I keep everything in this rifle cabinet loaded in case they come at night. I pay attention. I know what's out there. One day they're coming and I'll be ready. This rifle is my temple. It was my father's and his father's before, and his too, down to the years it took to settle this place. A bullet from that gun ripped a hole clean through your British flag. I pray to this gun. I talk to it as if talking to my ancestors. And to you, my protector, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. 327 people shot every day in America. Over a third shot and killed every day. 23 teens, 23 children and 6 teens dead every day. As if you can't just act on the stats. My 10-year-old daughter could shoot a baby deer, he said, straight through the heart from 50 yards. She's that good. The figures omit injuries caused by civil insurrection. And so, people, I'm going to read one final poem. I was practicing a few possibilities for today, last night, looking after my daughter, who's 3 years old. I mentioned her earlier on. Her name is Gaia. And as I was thinking, should I read this poem, 9 o'clock at night last night, my daughter walks in. And so I thought, okay, that's a kind of endorsement. So I'll finish with this. Thanks so much for listening. It's great to see so many people buying poetry books this weekend. Really wonderful. And yeah, I look forward to speaking with you down at the fair. This is for Gaia, for my daughter who I was separated from geographically, going through a period of separation from my wife. And I'm back in London now, but I was living in Liverpool, 250 miles away. And it was very painful, to pick up my daughter from Liverpool, long journeys she made. So it's kind of about that, but it's also about my father. My daughter and I, we go and see my father in a care home. He has dementia. And it's kind of beautiful to watch them interacting. So I'll close with this. Thank you for listening. To Gaia. Wales to the Wirral, Finland to Iceland, a V of geese telegraph north over the Celtic gateway. Where are they going, you ask? It is never a straight line. On a crinkled map, I look for you. Shadows in the hawthorn, stillness inside photographs. Where is north, you ask? The circuitry of the path from the village opens up, then spirals away. There is no leveling of the compass. Sleepless, you oscillate on trains, London to Liverpool, talk of alternate weekends. I measure calendar windows, traffic bulletins, service station exits, leery platform crowds at the buffers, too late for bedtime jackanoria. I lost my father at the same age. You cannot measure it. The echoes we made in car parks, dissonant across time. Autoplus playing hide and seek in the hills of Bohemia, it is not the same. Last night I dreamt of flash floods, fire. There was a ship that flew, and you were wondering whether to board, but I knew you had to go. I was wiping your eyes, trying to zip you up in a tent made for breathing. When we sit down,